Hey everybody, welcome to episode 55 of the Half Price Concessions podcast. You know, recently there's been such an uptick in the interest of lost speedways. You know, Matthew Dillner has the whole thing of lost speedways. Dale Earnhardt Jr. did the show on Peacock about lost speedways. Our friends at BAM Racing Videos have done some specials on some racetracks that have been gone and been inactive for some time. We did a series of episodes on them called Tracks of Yesteryear, featuring tracks that were on the NASCAR Cup Series Grand National schedule that were no longer in use or existence. But this episode's kind of a special one. We're not looking at some big track that hosted NASCAR racing or even a paved track or even cars at all. We're talking about an old, not long forgotten because we're talking about it, but long since unused kart track called the Altamahaw Kart Track just down the road from Ace Speedway in Altamahaw, North Carolina. Brad Allen joins us with some help from others that contributed stories to this episode to relive some memories from the Altamahaw Kart Track. So on the other side of this break, we're going to jump into the time machine and take a little trip back in time to the Altamahaw Kart Track and all the racing and memories that were made on it. Here in just a few moments.
Planning on doing some digging in your yard? Your simple backyard project could quickly turn dangerous. Buried underground cables and lines are just inches below the surface, so don't forget to make one very important call to 811. Calling 811 is the first step in having your buried utilities marked so you know where it is safe to dig. 811 is free, it's fast, and it's the law. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
This episode of the Half Price Concessions podcast is brought to you with support from Performance Center Racing Warehouse. In addition to being the home of the PRW chassis, Performance Center offers in-house setups and consulting, plus suspension and chassis pull-down analysis, along with their fabrication shop that can reclip your race car with the fastest turnaround in the industry. Give Roger Johnson and the Performance Center team the chance to earn your racing business by calling them today at 704-838-1400 or visit them online at performancecenter.com. That's PERFORMANCENTER.com. Back on the Half Price Concessions podcast, and I believe we are on appearance number 4 on the podcast. 4? First one of the new year for Mr. Brad Allen. Brad, good to see you as always. You're
glad to have you, Bud. You're always welcome here.
At the time of this recording, Brad's in a festive mood because his football team is actually winning games again.
It's January and Tampa Bay's still playing. That never happens.
Hey, by the time it's posted, times might have turned for the worse. But for now, Brad's in a good mood as a Bucs fan. But the reason for this was there was something that a mutual friend of ours, Scott Wicker, had posted not too long ago about something I had never heard of. Everybody now, when you think Altamahaw and racing, you obviously think of Ace Speedway. It's the big track. It's been there since '56. It's been a few different names. It's, thanks to 2020, when you Google Ace Speedway, there's a lot of articles about people not wearing masks and all kinds of goodies.
They hit the jackpot on that, but
but I did not know that in Altamahaw there was a little go-kart track that was actually not far from where Ace Speedway is, where there was a lot of racing. And Brad, I know you had a little bit of experience out there.
That's where we kind of cut our teeth there when Robert and I, we first started racing. I, bought my first kart from Robert and had some trouble with it and had to go back to Robert to see if he'd help me. And then I guess that got his interest peaked again, so we kind of started racing together, and that was one of the places we visited on Saturday nights. It was probably, as the crow flies, less than a mile from the racetrack.
Yeah, it's
through the woods or directly across the power lines there, but it had some prestige to it because it was so close to the dirt track then.
Yeah,
so kind of the way you envisioned the kart track that was at Ace, on the grounds, that's kind of how you fostered the dream, so to speak. start off on a cart there and work your way up, and then look over here.
That's where I progressed
there's
to.
a big racetrack right there. But you know, in those days it was dirt track, and you know, you're still going to Altamahaw, which you know, simpler times for sure, but you know, still a big deal. I used to have a good crowd there, and got to know a lot of people that you know still know today. And it was, like I was telling you, I got fond memories, but they're probably locked away. It's some animals of the mind somewhere.
We got to jog them a little bit. It's funny because you say all this, and not that I don't believe you by any means, but I can't find any pictures of this place.
No,
it's a little hard to find people that have stories, and from some of the notes that Richard Murphy gave me that we'll go through as we go through this, it didn't seem like something that was very widely publicized, and that might be part of why it hadn't been around for probably 20-something years.
You know, the thing back then, you know, this is early 80s, you know, probably 80, 81, 82. The big thing then was WKA. If you're racing karts, you WKA. You know, you had state races that were Liberty and, you know, other points you had to travel to. And then you had asphalt was really big then. So the dirt stuff was just kind of a local deal. And, you know, but I can tell you the dang locals around here, the Rosses, the Alan Weddles, the Doug Truitts, you know, those guys. I mean, Willie Saul, he had I do remember one, he had a pair of 2-cycle engines on both axles.
Yeah.
You know, just watching that thing go around and wondering how the heck he hung on to it, you know. But, you know, it wasn't, I mean, it was bigger than a club.
Yeah.
But you pretty much had the same group coming there.
Okay.
But out of that group,
was a lot of
you
time.
had, you know, to work your way up to the upper echelon of that deal, you had to be on your P's and Q's.
And it seemed like back then, even back to your time, kart racing, like any kind of racing, it seems like it just seems so much simpler back then.
Oh,
from what Wicker said and what from Richard Murphy told me,
well,
and from the expression on your face, I can always say, like, today it's gotten a lot more complicated. Everything costs more. The tire prep, blah blah blah, motors.
Yeah, well,
it was just a simpler time.
Yeah, you got to know your stuff now. You know, back then, you know, you got a set of Continentals that, you know, you put them on new, and you pretty much ran them a year, 2 years, or whatever. It wasn't anything like it is today. If you go out and look at the hardness of the track, or what kind of prep they got on it, and how much calcium, and what it's going to do later on in the evening. You just, you know, the carts are so much more advanced. You know, they got all these adjustments and stuff on them. You know, to adjust our car, it hit a center block, and you found somebody big to jump on it, depending on how much you wanted to put some wedge in it. You know, if you want to be a little, you put the little guy on it. You want a lot of, if you were out in left field and had to put a lot of wedge in it, you found a big guy and went to jumping on that thing. So, you know, it was just, like I said, it was just simple, and it kind of, you know, I guess that's where you cut your teeth, is a lot of it was the driver. You know, you didn't really dial the cart in. You just, you know, you found your line and whatever you could do to get around there the best. And I can tell you, when we started, we didn't get around there very good.
That's what Richard said. Richard said it was a driver's track. It was not one of these places where you just, you know, some kart tracks you go to and you're just flat footing it all the way around. Yeah, this was a real technical driver's track.
Oh, yeah. It was, if memory serves me correct, it's kind of like Darlington. You had one sweeping corner, and then the other corner was a little more banked and a little tighter. So it wasn't, well, set this corner up, you know, for that corner. It you know, and it would vary depending on the, you know, the wetness or dryness of the track, and, you know, entry points and picking it back up. I mean, you just didn't hold it wide open and hold on. Yeah. And you had to know when to come out of it, when to jump back in, and, you know, just starting into it. You know, the one story that I do remember vividly is Robert and I were racing together. He was running like Sportsman or Limited. He had kind of wanted something a little faster than the stock stuff, but, you know, I like
something a little more powerful than that Briggs and Stratton from the hardware store.
Could try to get out from under him, but, you know, I like stock stuff because you're running right over top of each other. You know, you really don't have a competitive advantage with motor, so to speak. Well, that particular night, I was driving our kart, and my dad had gotten into it. You know, but, you know, strange thing there is I didn't drive for my dad.
You didn't drive for J.W. Allen.
Not initially.
Okay.
You know,
you had to work up to that.
You know, Robert and I, you know, we were doing it. Then he got into it, and he had a couple of guys driving his stuff, and it was kind of like, well, why aren't you driving your dad's? I was like, oh no.
Ask him.
He bought it. He bought it after I got mine. I mean, of course, you know, I had a stepfather then too, but Robert actually drove Dad's kart one night. And that's when you ran heat races. You didn't do qualifying and stuff like that. And in the heat race, we were terrible. I mean, almost got lapped, but it was almost like Robert didn't want to pass me, and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, look, you don't have to pander to me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're driving somebody else's. You know,
You took that a little personal.
yeah.
Like,
if you're better, go on.
Yeah.
You know, don't feel like you're going to hurt my feelings. And he was like, you know, kind of took umbrage to it or whatever. It's like, okay, all right. So when feature time come around, we had made our adjustments, and you know, still a little bad blood there. Well, one of the dangest races for last place you'd ever seen. And we both, you know, it came down to one of us was going to finish last, and pretty much
it ain't gonna be me.
Pretty much at all costs you tried it. So I mean, you know, and we done got lapped already in the feature race, but I do remember it was white flag lap, and Robert he had passed me, I'd passed him back, and he had passed me, you know, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna get you. Well, he kind of dive bombed me going into one, and hit me, and I went off the banking in turn 2.
Yeah, I've got a story about that as well.
And and you know, leaders come around, take the dang checkers, and you know, he comes around, finish the race, and I'd went over the banking and landed in a tree. So I'm hanging in a tree.
Not next to a tree. You were in the tree.
I was in the tree.
Jeez.
And I mean, it felt like 10 minutes before they realized
somebody's missing.
not everybody's came off the track on the exit yet. I mean, they're obviously off the track, but you know, then you got about 20 people running over there, and they found me. And I'm like,
how old were you?
Probably, let's see, if it was 16, 17.
Okay.
I mean, old enough to know that.
Not supposed to be in the tree.
When I get out of this tree, I'm gonna go find Robert and say, hey, you know, last is still last, you know. But I guess I'd made it a point that, you know, he didn't have to. He didn't have to fall on the sword for my sake, I guess, and you know, that was. But it, you know, it kind of set the tone for our competitiveness and how we, you know, how we kind of took that and went forward. But you know, we eventually got pretty good there to where, you know, we weren't the laughing stock or hanging upside down in a tree, and you know, when we rolled in there, people knew they had to shoot for us as opposed to us trying to stay on the lead lap within. So that's actually where Scott Wicker started racing.
I doubt this is also a time nowadays when you go to go-kart races, it almost, just from the haulers, you almost think you're like at a big track because so many people got enclosed haulers and stuff. Yeah. I venture to say this was probably a time when everybody brought their carts in the back of a pickup truck.
Pretty much. We had a little green Ford, about a 67 short bed.
The old 100, not the 150.
Yeah, with a 3-speed stick in the floor, and we had 2 carts, and we had them crisscrossed in the back. You couldn't, you know, wasn't no stacker or anything like that. You just throw them in there. Front end's hanging out one side, and the other side, the other cart's hanging out. And then you shoved all your tools and stuff underneath it, and that was it. I mean, we didn't have a cart stand.
Yeah.
We had a dang milk crate that we jacked up the back to change gears, or, you know, I mean, it wasn't like it is today where, you know, as soon as they come off the track, they're on a dang stand and rolling somewhere where the tires never touch the ground. I mean, they just, kind of sit there. It was kind of a sandy pit area, but I mean, the track was always in great shape. I mean, you never.
Track prep was not an issue.
Yeah, you never showed up there like, you know, how they going to screw it up this week. I mean, it was always pristine. I mean, I couldn't tell you who owned it or who was in charge of it, you know, because that obviously is going to slip my mind. But it was just a great track. I mean, I venture to say if it was still around today, it'd probably be one of the top ones that people would come to, just because it was so challenging.
Yeah, just to help put it in perspective for those listening, if you're trying to figure out, well, where exactly is this place? If you leave a speedway and take a left and you head toward where the stop sign is at the end of Altamahaw Racetrack Road. You hang another left. You'll pass by the big church, and then before you get to another church, there's a road on the left. It's Dodd Road, D-O-D-D.
It's actually the first hard surface road to the right, and if you go straight across on that intersection,
Yeah.
you go straight across right there, it looks like you're going out into a field now.
Yeah.
But it was up there, down that road there on the left. But, you know, it was close enough to where, you know, Altamahaw's not a big place anyway.
No.
But, you know, but, you know, it was just, you know, we lived in, Robert lived in Graham at the time. So it was, you know, long enough ride to get your juices flowing and, you know,
Yeah.
where it was almost like a small road trip. I mean, it wasn't Eden or, you know, it was about the same distance from his house to Liberty as it was to Altamahaw there.
Yeah, what Richard said was some of the guys that were running multiple tracks, Liberty was one of them, and then let's see, I'm trying to find where the other track was. Red Rock.
They had Red Rock out there.
I'd never heard of Red Rock either.
Never had. Oh man, that's where it all started. I mean, that was.
How far was that?
That was out. Let's see, it's 49 and 119 where they intersect. Out,
Okay.
I guess towards the other side of Pleasant Grove. And if you go 119, like you going out to the lake or Samora, right there, 2 roads down, you hang a right and
So this,
kind of winded back in there. And Tom West, Donnie West, that was a Sunday. That's a Sunday racing there.
so you kind of had you almost had like a triangle-ish of.
Yeah, well, we had Whitsitt.
If you wanted to race your head off, you had plenty of options.
We had Whitsitt on Friday, which was Springwood, where the ball field is now.
That was a kart track.
It was like a little Bristol. I mean, it was out in the middle of a dang cornfield. Best red dirt you've ever seen, and that was a fun one. And then on Saturday you go, you know, Altamahaw, Liberty, Eden had one there, and then but Sundays was Red Rock. You know,
Wow.
And you know, we owned that place. I mean, that was my first race there. That's where I messed the go-kart up trying to beat Brenda Murphy. The story was there's a girl out there that can't nobody beat them.
Yeah.
And they can't beat her. And I'm like, she's a girl, I'm gonna beat her.
Yeah.
And never mind, Brenda was pretty tough.
She actually offered me a story for this. She said from Altamahaw Kart Track. She said she was in a race, and somehow or another, her and she said the guy's name was Gary Allison. I had never heard of him.
From Evan.
Apparently, they got hung together. Gary got hung up on the back of her cart, and they went tumbling down the banking that you spoke of before. Apparently, this Altamahaw place was pretty well banked.
Oh, yeah.
And she told me on the telephone, she didn't have long to talk, she was busy, but she said that Gary said, I wouldn't have known it was a girl I was hung up on until we went tumbling down the hill and I could hear the high-pitched scream. I didn't realize it was a high bank because on Google Maps it looks flat.
Oh, yeah, it looks flat, but it. I mean, they had built it up, and like I said, I think 3 and 4 were maybe a little bit more banked, but it was, you know, it wasn't exactly level either. So I guess, you know, you got a flat corner, but it was built up. That was the uphill part of it, and like I said, they had those little. I mean, I'd like to see those pine trees now because they're probably full grown, but back then they were the
Twigs,
the saplings or whatever, and you know, if you try to break a pine in half, the young ones don't give too much. So it was, like I said, it was good times back then. But you know, Brenda Murphy, she was back in the day. She was top dog.
Let's say JWL, and of course your dad, Robert Turner, also a Marshall Zimmerman.
Oh yeah,
you might know his more famous son Ziggy, but apparently Marshall ran out
probably
there.
why he doesn't like me as much as he probably remembers too much about me.
Oh geez. Well, it don't seem like there was really no place to hide out there. You was going to run into somebody.
Oh
eventually.
yeah, well, you know, like I said, you know, I say Doug Truitt. I mean, he was a legend there. A gentleman by the name of Alan Weddle could build the heck out of a modified. I mean, you know, people come from near and far to to have him build motors for him, and you know, he was kind of like a legend, and that's where he'd kind of go do his test and tune, so to speak. I mean, they wouldn't, stuff he had was so much better than anybody else. They really didn't have anybody to run with, so they just kind of go out there by themselves and run up there to the dang fence and watch them go around, and it's like, wow, that thing's fast, you know. But like I said, that never kind of tripped my trigger. I guess landing in that tree just broke me of wanting to tame a wild beast, so to speak.
For someone like me that don't know no better, how much different, just visually, did the karts you guys were racing look than the ones today? Because the ones today look pristine. They got that nice body on the front. They just look so clean. There
was no bodies on these.
Nobody at all. No side panels.
None whatsoever. I mean, you know, we would put our number panels on the Nerf bar, and you had one Nerf bar that kind of came out and really protected the motor as opposed to the rear tire. You know, and you had those right there in front of your seat, and then you had a bumper out front.
That's all you had.
So, you know, and in those days, you know, I mean, today you can go in there and lean on somebody or just knock them out of the way, and you ain't got to worry about touching wheels or going over. You know, back then, you know, open wheel, and you had to be, you know, when he says right up on the back, you know, you really had to watch that, because, you know, your front tires would get to a rear tire and they're going this way, and they'd pull you right up, and, you know, you get hung up on somebody, you know, either a caution or you both slow down until you figure out how to hit the brake quick enough to jump off of it so both of you could keep going. So it's totally different. I mean,
nowadays they knock the heck out of each other now.
Oh, well, I mean, they got all that protection and stuff on them, you know. And now you even got roll cages on some of the champ buggies, you know. So that would have played right into my style of driving. But you know, I had to figure out how to one, stay out of trees, and two, stay off of other carts. But you know, back then, I mean, you watch them today. They do qualifying, single file starts and restarts. I mean, every start we had double file.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
I've never really seen that.
It was real racing. I mean, you know, so you know, you had to be on you know, you hated being on the outside, but at the same time, you know, it taught you to have a lot of nerve, and then two, hopefully you could trust the person that was beside of you.
You gonna find out real quick if you can.
Yeah, that, you know, could hold their line. I mean, they'll tell you I was rough around the edges when I got into it, because racing a kart was totally different from me riding around on my A-bone around the tree out there in my yard. You know, in my mind I was doing great, but you get me around somebody else and things started happening, and I guess that's why I had to go back and see Robert to fix it.
Pardon my ignorance. How much, if any, safety stuff are you even wearing? Is it just a helmet and go, or did y'all have to wear the jackets? Like,
I had a jean jacket.
You wore a denim jacket.
Yep.
So you look like old John Denver out there.
Pretty much. You know, flip the dang collar up once you got your helmet off. A lot of the
God forbid you catch on fire, you're gonna burn up in a hurry.
A lot of the helmets then were open face. You just had the little bubble shield on it.
So, like Dale Earnhardt. Yeah. Oh, that was the style.
Yeah, and you know, and then when you got a Bell helmet, you know, oh, yeah, he's got a Bell. And then Simpson came out with the Bandit style helmet, to where it kind of had like a mouthpiece on it, like who's the guy in the Batman movie?
Gosh darn it, I forgot his name. Bale, yeah. Yeah, the bad guy, Bale.
And you know, and Robert got one of those, and we just thought we was the coolest ones ever, because we had the tinted shield and the Bale look there, and you look over at somebody and you give all the hand signals and stuff like that. I mean, it was an awesome time, but like I said, it was prehistoric in comparison to what they do today.
Yeah. I'll give you a Richard Murphy story, and this is from Flash. This is from Wicker.
Oh, here we go.
He says, Richard Murphy and Mike Thompson were the two toughest competitors that raced there. If you were fortunate enough to win a race against one of those, it was because one of them had trouble of some sort. Richard and Mike were running 1 and 2 one Saturday night, took the checkered flag, and did not stop racing. They must have thought there was still one lap to go. Coming off the fourth turn on lap 21 of 20, Richard and Mike got together. Mike wound up in the tires on the front stretch.
Right below the flag stand.
Yep. To be honest with you, I can't remember who won. Richard and Mike were the toughest around, and Richard actually confirmed that story when I called him on the phone. He said he said, I was so focused on trying to beat him, I totally forgot that, oh, there's a flagman here waving a checker flag. The race is over. Like, that was just how tough it was.
Oh, well, they were great friends, number one.
Yeah.
I think Richard actually kept up his kart, and that's when Scott got into it. But Mike Thompson, may know him. He was in the accident with Leon and Terry, and he was the one that survived it. But Mike and my dad, and like I said, Richard, and really that whole group. I mean, we got so close. Even to this day, David and Scott, they talk about those memories that we made, and how special a time it was for them as young kids. I mean, so I probably had too many hormones and other stuff going on in my head to really appreciate it. But I wouldn't trade that racing. They were my first racing family and have been ever since. So it's just it's one of those things you never take for granted. I mean, it's just God had a plan to put me with those people and keep them throughout my life. Yeah. And that's what's so cool about it. So when you say the Altamahaw Kart Track, yeah, I remember it, but you've done so much with those people throughout your whole lifetime that
it kind of runs together.
Different things, kind of take precedent.
Here's a few other names he threw out here of guys that had ran out there. Ricky Billings.
Yep.
I remember him from A Speedway.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Geringer Jerry Geringer was big in the modified class. I'm sure somewhere down the line there's a relation to Greasy somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And one of the other names he had mentioned as far as people that were in on the track was a Gary Geringer, who he did say was kin to GW.
GW, okay.
And see, I just don't. I'm too young to understand the significance of my exposure to anybody named Geringer at A Speedway was the guy driving the number 5 in Superstock class. And I know
we'll do anything on any given night.
You've referenced it on other ones we did about just how important that family was. 'Cause I think wasn't it the Geringers that paved A Speedway?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
See,
yep.
I was born in '88. I don't.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, Alamance County is not that big, but there's it's almost like clans located throughout. I mean, if you go southern Alamance, you got Schrontzes, and there's a family that kind of rules that part of it. Up here the northeast part, that's your that's your Geringer clan right there. They don't. The roots run deep, I guess you could say.
Did your cousins, the Masseys, run out there any?
That was the funny thing. Todd Massey could not drive a go-kart.
Really?
Yep.
Seemed like he could drive everything else.
Kind of like me when I started carpentry. I couldn't drive a nail. Well, he couldn't drive a go-kart. I mean, it just. I mean, he could at if you wanted to go race at the beach or somewhere at the amusement park or whatever.
But not in that competitive setting.
But with those, it was almost like you had to be so fine-tuned. And Todd just let me get it out of shape, and I'll show you a trick. Well, with those things, if you got out of shape, you're falling back. So you had to it's literally driving it with your butt sometimes, and I was like, you're supposed to be this great driver, and you're terrible. And I don't know that he would admit it.
Yeah.
But he never did. You look up his career, he never did race go-karts much.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I guess between and it probably showed how him and Robert raced each other. You got one bull in a china shop, and Roberts just don't want to be disturbed.
Yeah.
On his line or whatever. But a lot of that came from our experience with go-kart racing. It was all about momentum and keeping everything moving forward as opposed to sideways.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. See, it's something that I just did not know much about. I didn't really know about kart racing in general until when I came to work for you at Ace, and Chase Murphy was running go-karts, and I went out there with him a few nights, and that was a learning lesson. And then after some time, you had kind of tried to get the karting going at A Speedway on Saturdays to kind of have, like you said, to run here and then progress over here.
Yeah.
I just did not understand kart racing was such a deal.
Oh yeah. Well, and
because I always just thought of amusement parks.
And one of the things you ask about the difference between our time and the time now. Well, somewhere it transitioned to where you're almost laying down driving the thing.
Yeah, that's the ones I've known my whole life. Is
You're laying. I mean, ours the seat. I ain't gonna say it's set straight up, but my style, and you can't see me, but it was like this.
You were leaning forward.
I was forward with my head tucked, and and literally had my thumbs up, and that's, and I could peripheral seeing how much I was working steering wheel because you pulled yourself up, and we were actually one of the first ones to get the long steering shaft, because others was like this, I mean, Richard Murphy,
hands are real close to your chest.
hands real close, and the elbows are straight out.
Yeah.
And he's driving like that. Well, we had our steering shaft come way up, or we were almost underhanded.
Oh, okay.
And it was easier to tuck down, so you're, almost driving, elbows in. It was all about, well, let's cut and drag. I got a picture we'll throw on the website there. You see Scott Murphy sitting on our cart, and he's got his socks tucked in.
His jeans tucked into his socks?
Yeah, when we pulled up, we actually started doing that because it was, it got to where you needed the most infinite advantage you could get.
Wow.
But like I said, it didn't hurt that we were out front either. So
It just looks so different now. See, now the whole time I've known karting, like you said, they're laid so far back.
Oh yeah,
it almost looks like, you ever seen in the Olympics when they do luging?
Yep.
It almost looks like that.
I scrubbed. I can't recall his drawing a blank. But he actually wanted me to drive his kart over at the racetrack, kart track, one night. And I was like, yeah, that'll be fun. 10 laps in, my stomach done cramped so much. It was, because I'm wanting to pull myself up, but it's designed to lay back, and instead of relaxing, just laying back. It was like, I'm getting ready to die on this thing. I was like, y'all can have this mess.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. But no, you look at. I'll invite you to that vintage karting group because it's pretty cool. And when you see some of the names that race that stuff, and what they accomplished later on. I mean, that was kind of my the reason I got into auto racing was we had outrun Stacy Compton 2 years straight at the Goodyear plant there in Danville.
Oh, they had a kart track there?
Yeah, an asphalt track.
Oh.
And it was a road course. Well, it was an oval, but it had a road course. It had a dog leg on one end and what they called a carousel on the other end. So they could literally run different layouts every time you went. So you'd run oval with dog leg, oval with carousel, full road course.
Yeah.
And then you'd run them all backwards.
Well, those were probably the shifter karts, weren't they?
No, these were just our standard stuff. But, Stacy was really funded, and when I got out of the racing and started playing softball, not professionally, but about every weekend somewhere, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, Stacy Compton's sitting on the pole at Daytona, and I'm like,
I'll run that guy.
wait a minute.
That guy got a ride?
He can't be that good. We schooled him. So that's really, where that came from. So I, jumped. That's how I bought Todd's car and went at it. Because I was like, well, Todd can't drive a go-kart, and this car is winning championships. I'm going to be the man.
No problem.
I'm going to be the man. Another guy I raced against was D. Campbell, and that was the first time I was in a race car. It was over there practicing. And he come by me like I was sitting still. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be going faster than this?
Yeah. And
jumped on the gas and tried to follow him, and he went into turn 3 and I didn't.
Wow. That's crazy.
But no, it's like I said, for the location of that, it was almost, it would almost be better if it was still there, obviously for the neighbors part of it and stuff like that. But for the layout of it, it was almost like, you had to remove it from a speedway for that to be your goal.
Yeah.
As opposed to it being on the grounds and you're coming there, and then when somebody has a problem with it, all they call it is a speedway, and the track, the speedway's image would suffer for the kart track.
Yeah.
You know,
It's two different animals.
so if it was somewhere else, you know, now you would know the difference. You know, especially given today's age where, you know, everybody's a warrior on the keyboard there. So.
Yeah. I still can't get over just how different a time it was with the ages, because this is at a time when, you know, guys like Kyle Petty, Dale Jarrett, the guys that were kind of coming from those times, guys didn't get in a full size car till they were 18.
Yeah,
but
shoot,
you know,
probably older than that.
And nowadays, it seems like if you're not in a late model by 14, you're a failure.
Oh yeah, your career's over before you hit 20 if you haven't ascended to that.
Yeah, it's just such a different time.
And for all Jeff Gordon did, Jeff Gordon changed everything on that.
Yeah.
I mean, because I was right there on the cusp of, you know, you better be winning at the local track. You know, see Dale Earnhardt. You better win somewhere, and you better do it with almost less. You know, so they would come to you and say, hey, you're doing more with less than, you know, we see this guy. He comes in with everything you need. And then we see this bare bones guy getting all he can out of what he's got. You're the one with the real talent.
This is who we need to hire.
You know, and they would come and hire you. Now you go write a check, and, you know, I'm good on iRacing, so I must be,
they're getting paid more to win iRaces than they are real races.
They'll throw you on a simulator, and you know, you get all this, you know, all this technological stuff. I mean, I got close to that. I mean, Jack Billmeyer actually wanted me to drive his car. You know, if you don't know Jack Billmeyer, he kind of took the fall for Rick Hendrick over the whole Honda deal way back when.
Okay.
And my dad emphatically said, no, he's not interested in driving your stuff. I just happened to be in the bathroom at the time and didn't know about it until he said, hey man, if you ever become interested, give me a call. And I'm like, call about what, Pop? He goes, oh, you don't want to drive that piece of junk. I'm like, really?
Way to go, Dub.
He got me. So, but like I said, I given a chance, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, it worked out the way it was supposed to work out. I mean, because, you know, one, I got a lifelong friend, Robert Turner, and two, the Murphys have been a huge part of my life. And, you know, you got people like Scott Wicker, Mike Thompson, and, you know, those guys you just got to hang out with. And, you know, you looked at it at the time as, you know, we're here to outrun them and almost bury them, so to speak. When, you know, in the end, it was just preparing you for what, you know, what your heart wanted you to do later on.
Yeah.
You know, so if you didn't have that experience, you weren't going to be any good at it. And, you know, luckily my experience worked out in modifieds. It didn't do too good in late models. So.
No. And to kind of help bring it to a period on the end of the sentence, hearing all these stories, this is just good stuff. This is stuff I love. And it makes you wonder, well, what happened to it? And all Richard would tell me was, he said, I'm not sure why it quit going, because it seemed very successful. He told me, he said it wasn't an issue of low car counts or someone getting hurt or killed out there, something like that. It was just, it kind of just came to a close, and he wasn't really sure why. So that was kind of intriguing to me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, thinking back on it, I couldn't tell you when we stopped running there, but it may have been when they stopped running.
Yeah.
You know, because it was almost, I wouldn't say it was a fad, it just kind of faded away because it was such a nice facility, you know, well kept and all that. But it was just, I guess when, you know, things were changing then, you know, started getting the bodies on them, and, you know, then the dirt became the big deal. But, you know, we were right on the cusp of transitioning into the different tires, different compounds for different places you went to. I mean, we
Starting to get a little more expensive.
Yeah. We would take our old asphalt tires and kind of experiment with, well, this is asphalt. This feels like it's harder. Let's try them. You know, and you realize then, well, if we soak them and put creosote or something like that on, but then, you know, that was just so time consuming. I mean, it kind of took away from, you know, this is actually work. You know, we just want to go race.
Yeah.
You know, so it kind of turned into that scientific deal. But, you know, and that may have been part of it, that that group just wasn't cut out that way.
Yeah.
You know, where you spend all week on your go-kart. You know, it was kind of like, all right, it'll crank. Let's go race.
Yeah.
You know, so, but,
give it a pull on the string and get out there, get on, one pace lap and go green.
Get on with it. Yeah. So, like I said, you know, especially what we're dealing with these days, the simple times seem so much better.
Yeah, because it's just, it's, you know, a lot of the kids they kind of go the Bandolero legend route, and that, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's a challenge, but it's just different. And then they get pushed up so young.
Yeah, I mean, it's the pressure, and, you know, it's like, you're going to do this.
Yeah,
you see it.
You got to be in K&N by 18.
We've seen it, you know, where you know, you get dads just wearing their kids out because they're not hitting their marks. You know, like I said, I'd like to have if I had a penny for every lap I made around that tree in my driveway, you know, I would have never had to work. You know, but I'm in my head, I'm racing Richard Petty, I'm racing David Pearson, you know, and I'm running 5th with 4 laps to go, and I got to make a move. And, you know, it was just, you know, like I said, it was just simple times. You kind of used your imagination and came up with your own stuff. Now it's, you know, I'm going to get you on a race monitor or a racing game here, you know, when you're 3 years old, and we're going to figure out, how are you going to do this for a living? Yeah, that's just, to me, that seems so backwards, as opposed to, I want to go race. I want to get a kart. You know, I want to do this, you know, and you just couldn't wait. I mean, it was 14 before I ever got my first go-kart. So, you know, it was almost like a carrot dangling in front of me. I'd have loved to have been racing at 5 years old.
Yeah. Part of me fears that the people that are in my age bracket, you know, give or take a couple of years, it seems like so many of them now, by the time they get to 37, 38, they're done. They're just kind of burnt out on it. Where it seems like more of your generation, obviously there's exceptions. I mean, racing into your 50s and your 60s. Yeah. Well, where it seems like my generation is getting burned out sooner because they're going harder sooner.
Yeah, I was 30 years old when I bought Todd's late model.
Yeah.
You know, that's when I started racing. You know, now, you know, I mean, we saw it at Ace. You know, Jeff Burton comes over there. You know, are you going to let my son race? You know, he's 11. I'm like, why are you asking me if he can race when you've already bought a car, you got a seat in it?
Got Brandon McReynolds out here spotting for him.
He's obviously, you know, that's what he's going to do. So why are you asking me if he can race? You're his dad. Are you going to let him race? And, well, we'd like to run here. I was like, well, if I can tell that's not an 11-year-old in the car, then you're more than welcome to.
I remember you telling me that.
And I caught a lot of backlash for it, but, you know, it was pretty cool to see Jeff Burton fly in from New Hampshire and land a helicopter out there in the dang field and go out there and pick him up on a golf cart and get him over there. And, you know, so like I said, you know, we've talked about that with all the young people that came through there that, you know, for one reason or other, some of them got a better break than others. And I think that's more to do with how big the check was.
I blame Jeff Gordon. It's all Jeff
Gordon's fault. It was Jeff Gordon. I mean, that's
and his stepdaddy's fault.
That's why I never liked him. You know, he stole my chance.
He changed the game.
Because like I said, when he did it, it was like we got to go find the next one, and we started going backwards as opposed to going forward. So you know, I think that's why Earnhardt gave him such a hard time, because
probably was.
You know, he don't feel like he cut his teeth as much as he should have. You know, and that's the old guard. You know, but you know, you don't really have any. Outside of Tony Stewart, there's not really that many left in the sport, and I guess that's why some of the true NASCAR fans, or older NASCAR fans, I guess I should say, have lost touch with how things happen.
Yeah,
you know, you used to go watch them somewhere. You know, now it's they start on TV. They don't work their way up to TV. They start on TV.
Yeah. Well, I have learned a ton from this, brother. I appreciate you sharing some
It went
stories.
better than I thought because
I know you sounded like you were so afraid. Oh, I done forgot everything. You jogged it back for an hour.
I told you it's in there. It's just the filing system's been rearranged over the years. So.
You never caught on fire out there, did you? You landed in a tree. I'm surprised you didn't catch on fire.
Well, I mean, I've been on fire, and if you think about it, methanol, you don't see fire.
Yeah, it burns clear.
All you do is feel fire.
Yeah.
And, I've had that happen to me a couple times where you start seeing your hairs on your arms shrivel up and stuff like that. But luckily, the way I landed, it was behind me, and it never really got on because I was. It's almost like being in a car upside down. If you pull the belts, you're gonna land on your head.
Yeah.
And I knew if I crawled off of that thing, one, I'm hanging in a tree. Two, that tree's got roots down there, and if I jump off and get to the roots, that cart's probably going to come with me, and it was going. We were going to swap positions instead of being on it. It was going to be on me. And like I said, I just wanted to go find Robert because I was like, "Hey, dude, we don't need to do this for last place. It's not any fun."
This was not. this was nothing akin to that 2008 skirmish on the front stretch between you and Gary Young Jr.
Probably not.
We didn't have that because now that was legendary. We talked about that on the other one.
Oh, yeah.
That was a
Yeah,
legendary
that was
confrontation.
Great time. I got to find that.
It's got to be a picture.
I'm hoping we get snowed in here in the next couple of 3 weeks because I've got the only video of that.
Oh, I want to see it. You got to find it.
Oh, it's
It's somewhere.
What's Webster?
Jim Webster.
Yeah, Webster had it. Doug was the GM then.
Yeah, Doug Smith.
And we had to go in and review what happened.
I bet you had a hard time not laughing watching.
That was obviously I think I was running for that was second championship.
Yeah, it was 08.
And that was the third.
The third one.
That was the third one. Yeah, that was the first race of the chase, so to speak. And won a great race.
Yep.
A heck of a dang finish. I mean, probably one of the best finishes out there. That I've seen, and I actually got to be a part of. But we had to review the whole dang tape. And the whole thing was Neil, my crew chief or crew member. He's the one that dove on the crowd of Youngs and went to the bottom, and then
Neil would never do that.
And the next thing you know, you see him come up on the other side of the guardrail going, yeah, and they had stomped on him and kicked him and everything like that, and all that's on that tape. I mean, so I gotta find that because I did bribe Webster to give me that because he's like, this has got to be cut out. He don't want this to get out because neither one of us got suspended or I think we probably had to pay a fine, but but it would be gold today.
Oh, absolutely.
Because like I said, Gary Young probably get a kick out of it. We've become really good friends since then, but back then,
blast from the past.
Back then, not so much.
Well, I appreciate it as always, brother. Thanks for the stories.
Hey, yes. Anytime you need content, we'll dream some up.
We've done this before a time or two. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Half Price Concessions Podcast. Be sure to find us on Facebook by searching for the Half Priced Concessions Podcast. Give us a like, leave us some comments if you will, share some of our postings and whatnot. If you see something you like, that would really help us get the word out a ton. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the Half Price Concessions Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Pocket Casts, whatever app you're using to listen to our show, YouTube as well. Whichever way you're listening, make sure you hit the subscribe button. That way, not only will you automatically see when we put out new material, but it also helps us out a whole lot more than you could ever know. Special thanks to our partners at North Carolina 811 Dig, the Performance Center Racing Warehouse. We've got some new partners coming in as well, so stay tuned. A lot more good stuff to come, but we really appreciate you listening to the Half Price Concessions Podcast. My name is Tyler Williams, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.